to another one of my retro WrestleMania reviews. We are now on WrestleMania 22. We are now officially 2/3 of the way through this WrestleMania review series. We have 11 more left, and I'm hoping to knock these out a little bit quicker because as these WrestleManias go on, I again become a little bit more familiar with things. So that's how it should be the case. Not as much research needs to be done. So we can write in WrestleMania 22. This is a show that, after looking back, especially with some of the more recent WrestleManias over the past like 10, 11 years, I feel like this one, for some reason, gets overlooked a lot. It's not really viewed as like one of these stronger WrestleManias, but to me, I say it could possibly be maybe like top 15, top 10. I think this is a pretty strong WrestleMania that a lot of people seem to overlook. We have a couple little matches and storylines involved in this show that some people would talk about, but I feel like this show gets overlooked for some reason. I feel like it's a little bit more on the underrated side as far as WrestleMania is good, because I thought it was a really strong show. There was one bad match in here, some stuff that was like okay, but most of the stuff was like good to great. Only had one classic, which we'll talk about that. That's a match that one reason what really drew me into watching snippets of this WrestleMania before I started watching all the WrestleManias like I am now. But for the most part, everything was either good to great. Again, maybe like one or two things that wasn't, but everything else was like, B level for the most part, pretty much. Which is why I'm going to give this WrestleMania a really strong B. Close to a B+, but I didn't think it quite got to a B+. I thought it was a really strong B. So let's get right into this show. WrestleMania 22 took place on April 2nd, 2006 at the Allstate Arena in Chicago, Illinois. Oh, those Chicago crowds. I always enjoy watching those when we watch Raw or, usually Extreme Rules or Payback. Usually like, the May, June, or July pay-per-view every year is always in Chicago. They're always a great crowd, and tonight they made their voice heard, especially for a certain person, which we'll talk about that when it comes to the main event. But tense about, I think about 20,000 again or so, not too bad. Excuse me. Any other notable notes about this WrestleMania before I start with the matches? I don't think so. Let's get right into it. We started off with the Raw WWE Tag Team Championship match. It was Kane and the Big Show, the champions, taking on the upstarts, Carlito and Chris Masters, two very underutilized talents through their times. They had somewhat success, but they probably could have had a little bit more of a stronger, mid-card runs as well as they did, but unfortunately it did not happen for them, but they still had some success in their time in the WWE. Kane and the Big Show as tag team, solid. I thought they were pretty good as a tag team from what I saw in this match. It was pretty much, just two big guy veterans taking on some smaller, upstarts. And the match was pretty solid. I'm not going to say it was a bad match. It was still pretty good for what it was. Kane and Big Show get the victory. After the match, there was some tension between Carlito and Chris Masters. But this tag team, though, with Kane and the Big Show didn't last long because I know that this was like right before the time wherever they went into that whole storyline, the whole May 19th thing. May 19th. May 19th. May 19th. They didn't... Kane just kept like hearing the voices about May 19th inside his head, and he kept freaking out. People kept mentioning it. He's like, don't say May 19th or whatever. And I forgot. I think I read that the reason why they were stressed is they're trying to, promote this recent movie that Kane was in that was just coming out. And I think also in the storyline-wise, it was revealed that May 19th is the day that Kane's mother and adopted brother or whatever it was died in a burning fire or something like that. I can't remember exactly what like the deals, but it was somewhere along the line. And it did lead to eventually him and the Big Show breaking up. The Big Show, though, later this year would go to ECW, though, also, and turn heel. So that's the reason why this alliance didn't really last for too long. But they do reunite. I think they were tag champs again, I would say, in 2011. Because I do think they had a match in 2011 against CM Punk, and I think it was Mason Ryan, I think, one of the other members of the New Nexus at the time. But they do reunite later on down the line, but this alliance was short-lived. But again, the match was still solid with, different styles kind of clashing with, two bigger guys against smaller guys. It worked pretty well together. So I'll give this a solid opener for what we got. We then had the second Money in the Bank ladder match. It was Matt Harvey, Shelton Benjamin, Mr. My name is Finlay, and I love to fight. RVD, Rob Van Dam, Bobby Lashley, and the Nature Boy. Woo! Ric Flair. My goodness, I can't believe for how old he was. He was in this match as well. Some of the bumps he took. He took like a suplex off the ladder and a couple other crazy stunts. He did leave the match briefly, but he did come back. Trying to remember who was the one that was shocked that he came back in. I think it was Finley. I think was the one who was shocked that he came back in. But this match, it was good. Some crazy spots of the ladders, not as good as last year's though, but it was still a solid match. I think the ladders were, one was thrown at Matt Hardy. They were still used very well in the match, but I just felt that it didn't quite, capitalize as a classic like it did last year. Shelton Benjamin again had some good spots in this match as he did last year. He was the one who seemed like could have won a Money in the Bank ladder match, but never got there. RVD had some good moments. The frog splash. The ending as well with him grabbing the Money in the Bank contract, and I think he actually fell off the ladder as well because I think the one ladder that was next to him hit off the rope but came back and bumped into his ladder, and as he's grabbing the briefcase, he fell. But he still got the briefcase and won. He would go in and cash in and fight John Cena for the championship at ECW's One Night Stand that year, where Cena got literally ripped on by the crowd. Of all crowds that hated on Cena, I can't remember where they were at for that show, but I've seen highlights of the match and heard the hate that John Cena got for it, but that's one ECW pay-per-view I'd like to go back and watch. I haven't gotten to watch it yet, but my goodness, did Cena get a lot of hate for around this time. This was a time where John Cena was starting to be realizing in the reactions that he got, not as bad today, but for quite a while when he was being pushed as the guy in the company, like the greatest of all time, as the gimmick that they put on him pretty much. But RVD wins. He would win the title, but I think he did lose it. I forgot. There was some incident outside of WWE he got involved with later that year that caused his push to kind of be pulled the plug on for whatnot, but still. Just another great moment for him as well, and another great match. We now move on to the United States Championship match. It was the champion, Chris Benoit, taking on JBL with Jillian Hall. The match was pretty solid, I felt. Wasn't really one of... the bars for me at this time, I know that Chris Benoit has, this year and probably next year as well, until his tragedy again, but I think the bar was already set pretty high for me for Chris Benoit when he won the title back, the world title at WrestleMania 20. So, the match was still good. Wasn't the best I'd seen out of Chris Benoit, but, with JBL being called the American, I forgot what nickname he was called. You kind of felt that maybe this was him going to be winning the title. He does win again with cheap heel tactics. He used the ropes. The referee wasn't looking. He won the match. Again, it was pretty solid. Still not really the best Chris Benoit match I've seen, but it was still solid for what it was. We move on now to, this was the biggest match of the night. This, when people talk about WrestleMania 22, well, actually, there's three things to think about here at WrestleMania 22. There's Rey Mysterio, Mickie James, and this hardcore match. My goodness, is this one of the most grueling matches I think I've watched ever in WWE history. This match somewhat reminded me of the Asylum match at Extreme Rules last year, except of course this was a lot better. The Asylum match at Extreme Rules in 2016 was still good in my opinion. It was just too long. But this match especially, wasn't limited at all. It was a hardcore match. It was Edge taking on Mick Foley, who was, still part-time at the time, just, going, just help put people over. The story was pretty simple. It was Edge had cashed his Money in the Bank contract earlier this year on John Cena at New Year's resolution after the Elimination Chamber match. Cena would win the title back, and I think Foley was a referee, and then Edge got upset with him saying he screwed him out. This is also where, Edge and Lita's alliance, as I started talking about last year, was in full effect. Of course, it would last till the end of the year whenever Lita finished off with the company. And this also was the last year for her best friend Trish Stratus as well, which we'll talk about her later as well. But my goodness, this hardcore match, everything was in there you can ask for. The weapons, the hardcore rules were put beyond. There was, not just the pants or the kendo sticks. Edge came out already swinging with a baseball bat. But my goodness, did things get even more extreme. Mick Foley, Edge earlier in the match speared Foley, but it looked like Edge was in more pain. I'm thinking, what does Foley have on underneath him? He had barbed wire around his waist. He cuts the barbed wire and literally, starts shedding off some of Edge's skin. There was a lot of blood in this match. And then what else do we have? Foley also had a barbed wire bat he used on Edge quite a few times. He even wrapped the barbed wire around Mr. Sacco. He even used it on Lita too, and Lita tried to interfere in the match. So Lita got a little bit of a cut on her mouth as well. But Edge, and Foley were both bleeding a lot from the face. Edge from the arm from when he did the spear on the barbed wire. What else? We got thumbtacks as well. Makes me think of, again, that's what made me think of the Asylum match was the thumbtacks bump that Jericho and Ambrose used. And then, it was funny too, in that podcast, that Talk is Jericho podcast, whenever Ambrose and Jericho were talking about that match and the bump of the thumbtacks. At first, they thought, oh, maybe Dean will take the bump in the thumbtacks. But Jericho's like, wait, if you're going to go over, you can't take the bump in the thumbtacks. But Edge won the match, but he took the bump in the thumbtacks. I don't know how many he got in there. I didn't hear him saying he could put 69 tacks in my back. 69 tacks, Ambrose. But you didn't hear him complaining about it afterwards. Well, he may have. I just didn't hear anything. But yeah, Foley did powerbomb him into the thumbtacks. But eventually there was lighter fluid just laying around, and then Foley went to light the table, but then Lita interfered. She went even more nuts on the table and would light the table completely on fire. And that's where that famous moment happened where Edge speared Mick Foley and they went through that burning table. And it was Falls Count Anywhere, so that's where Edge got the win. But my goodness, if you want to talk about a hardcore match where guys literally try to kill each other, this was the match. Again, the barbed wire, the thumbtacks, the fire. There was just so many extreme moments in this match that it's definitely one of the more grueling matches to watch, I'd say. But it's a lot of fun. It's worth it. I definitely recommend checking out. One of the best WrestleMania matches, I definitely got to say. But yeah, that was that match. Just an incredible classic. Then we get to the complete opposite. This was the worst match of the night. It was the Boogeyman taking on Booker T with Sharmell. The Boogeyman was someone who seemed like he was more meant to be a character. He wasn't really anything much of a wrestler. Booker T and Sharmell just try hanging together. I thought first it was going to be, was this a handicap match? It seemed because Sharmell was in the match at the beginning and she tagged herself out of it and Booker T came in. And then the Boogeyman ate worms. And then he kissed Sharmell after eating the worms. So Sharmell got a taste of the worms and she walked away. And then the Boogeyman would eventually get the win. It was just odd. I didn't really, get it. I wasn't really entertained by it. I was a little grossed out by the worms as well. So, worst match of the night. Moving on speaking of which, another great match we had tonight. The WWE Women's Championship. It was Trish Stratus taking on Psycho Mickie James. Now, before WrestleMania 32, my friends kept telling me the last great WrestleMania match in the women's division that happened was at WrestleMania 22. Mickie James and Trish Stratus. Mickie James had the Psycho Mickie James gimmick, and I'm like, ooh, I gotta see this. So I watched the video package, and I saw the match, and I'm like, why did they not bring Mickie James back like this when she returned earlier to SmackDown this year? And I hear rumors that apparently this was all Mickie James' idea. Mickie James had just came in. She was like, a fangirl, obsessive, clingy person to Trish Stratus, saying how big of a fan she was. And then she wanted to be more than friends. She kissed Trish Stratus, for crying out loud. She had a shrine of her. She was obsessed. Where it came to a point where Trish was like, you know what? This is a little too much. We need some space. And of course, Mickey's like, you want to be my friend? I'll give you be your friend or not. And that's when, she just started, targeting Trish and wanted to take her NXT Women's Championship. Just that whole video package as well with, Mickey tying up her Trish's new friend Ashley Morocco, I can't remember what her last name was, the bloody nose, and then to her knocking out Trish Stratus and kissing her while she was knocked out. It was just like, it was creepy, but it was different and it was great. And then this match also, Trish Stratus, who was, a 6-time women's champion, unlike her last runs, as she did retire later this year in a match against Lita where she wanted to win the women's title one more time and then retire as women's champion. I do remember watching that match when I was like going back and like briefly just like scheming through some pay-per-views. But my goodness, again, this is just some awesome women's actions. And then, of course, they dress up in these skirts as well, which I thought was strange, but it was still, this was very entertaining. Great women's action. Probably the best women's WrestleMania match of all time, I'd say. Just great action. The finish that was a little bit abrupt with Mickie James randomly, doing just kicking Trish in the head, and that was it. I was hoping for a little bit more of a dramatic ending, pretty much, but it was still a great match. I can't take away from it. Mickie James, though, is now on top of the women's division for the next couple of years as well. So, yeah, Psycho Mickie gets the victory. Again, I wish they would have brought this character back whenever she was brought back earlier to the WWE this year, and then she goes on the shelf for a while. And then she gets a title run shot with Alexa Bliss, and now it's like she's going back to where she was, which is strange. So we'll see what happens, because literally anytime Mickie James has gotten a hold of a microphone, has been allowed to cut an actual promo, she's great. Like this video package showed it, and I saw on WrestleMania 22, and then some of the promos she cut leading up to her match with Alexa Bliss at TLC this year were great as well. Why did the WWE bring her back if you're not going to do anything with her anyways? I just don't get it. But nevertheless, this match was still awesome, and I loved it. We then move on to WrestleMania Streak match number 14. It was a casket match between The Undertaker and Mark Henry. Now, Mark Henry, from what I can see, seemingly accidentally got the heat that he was getting because he was the one who injured Batista and put Batista on the shelf, causing him to relinquish the World Heavyweight Championship. So he was someone who, accidentally seemingly got a push. I know he was known as the world's strongest man. Mark Henry never was like a terrible competitor. Only other time I remember really getting a push was 2011 when he did get a run with the World Heavyweight Championship before he lost to Big Show and Daniel Bryan cashed in. That's when Daniel Bryan won the title. It just seemed like that Mark Henry never really, had that big break. He never really was the performer that they made it seem like he was, given him being known as the world's strongest man. And this match with Undertaker, it was okay, but it just wasn't anything special at the same time. Only one I could really think from the match was I remember there was a time where, it looked like Mark Henry was going to close the casket on Taker, but Taker just like grabbed him by the throat as he was in the casket, and eventually, Mark Henry gets into the casket and he loses the match. But there also a spot where I think Taker did like some type of suicide dive or whatever over the casket into Mark Henry. Again, with Undertaker being like 6'10" and like about 300 pounds, you wouldn't think a guy like that big would be able to do a move like that. But he could. But then, of course, Taker wins the match 14-0 again. The match was all right, nothing really spectacular. Moving on to this no-holds-barred match. Shawn Michaels taking on Vince McMahon. This feud happening because this was the year where Bret the Hitman Hart was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And, he pretty much just got himself into the Hall of Fame after saying, you know what, the Montreal Screwjob, it's done. I'm past it. I'm just ready to move on. And, of course, Vince McMahon, didn't want to. And then HBK was like, you got to move on from it. And because of that afterwards, Vince McMahon went out of his way to make Shawn Michaels' life miserable. And then that's exactly right what led this match. The McMahon family pretty much, just ganging up on him. Shane was out there. HBK handcuffed him. But this was all just almost a Shawn Michaels squash match. As, Shawn just beat the crap out of Vince McMahon. Like, Vince started posing by his little Playboy poster or whatever it was. bodybuilding poster. I can't remember what it was. And then HBK just attacked him, just beat the crap out of him. This is the match also where he did that elbow drop from the top of the ladder while Vince had the garbage can on his head. He eventually beats him with the super kick. Entertaining, wasn't a classic, but it was still a very entertaining match as well. It does lead to that really weird match though at Backlash in 2006. Where Vince McMahon believed that he lost at WrestleMania because it wasn't him against Shawn Michaels, it was Shawn Michaels and God against him. So Vince McMahon starts going nuts, making up McMahonism, wherever it was. So he makes a match at Backlash. It was Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon taking on a team of Shawn Michaels, and the quote how Michael Cole said it, God? Yeah, God was literally, HBK's tag partner. Had like a weird entrance showing like this light, but it just turned to pretty much just a 2-on-1 handicap match between them. But it did lead to the eventual return of DX, as also this was the year of the Spirit Squad as well. Remember those guys? They got involved in this match too. It would be DX against the Spirit Squad though for most of the rest of the year. That's the team, of course. Let me see if I can remember all the members. Nikki, which was Dolph Ziggler, Mikey, Kenny. I can't remember all 5 of them, but yeah, that goofy little team, of just like these young looking athletes, trying to be stars and just being Vince McMahon's henchmen pretty much to go after DX, but whatever, they're still entertaining for what they were, but yeah, that match God. I just like the way Michael Cole said it, or whoever said that. But that was great. And then the SmackDown World Heavyweight Championship match, Kurt Angle taking on Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio, a triple threat match. Kurt Angle was the champion. The big story here was Rey Mysterio. Again, Eddie Guerrero passed away back in November 2005, and this was him saying, I want to win the Royal Rumble for Eddie. I think Rey entered at number 2 and won the Royal Rumble, but then Randy Orton was just being the manipulator, making Rey upset that he put his WrestleMania opportunity on the line at No Way Out. Orton, though, cheated and won the match. However, Teddy Long said, Orton won the match, but what he did was wrong, so you're still going to be included in the match. The match was good. It was a little short, though. I will give it that. But Rey Mysterio won the match. He did it for Eddie. He would hold on to the title, I think, until the Great American Bash. That's when King Booker, all hail King Booker, beat him for the title, and he would hold on to that until Batista returned, which Batista, again, was out due to injury, but he did appear in a show after Randy Orton was interviewed saying he was going to win the title. He says, I may not be here at WrestleMania 22, but WrestleMania 23, I will be the World Heavyweight Champion. And he was right, I believe, so he does face The Undertaker next year, and I believe he was the World Heavyweight Champion going into the match. Again, this match is still good. It was short. I know people say Mysterio didn't really have the strongest title run, but again, I felt like I was happy for him. The story behind it with him doing it for Eddie, pretty much. And some people say, he never really deserved the spot. He only just did it because he was friends with Eddie. Well, then, I mean, if it was for Eddie, then why didn't they give it to Chavo Guerrero or to give it to him? That's an argument a lot of people seem making the research that I've gotten. So. But I'm still happy for Rey. He was great, and he did the story of him doing it for Eddie was just great as well. So that was for that match. And finally, well, actually, before we get to the main event, we had another WrestleMania softcore porn with in a Playboy pillow fight, Candice Michelle and Tori Wilson. As I say, I'm not really a guy who goes out of the way to watch stuff like this. It was whatever, pretty much. Main event, though, for the WWE Championship. Now, this year, actually, I believe from what I saw in the research, that the SmackDown and Raw titles did switch. Raw now had the World Heavyweight Championship. SmackDown had the World Heavyweight Championship, and then Raw had the WWE Championship. But this was around a time where John Cena won the title back from Edge after he lost it when Edge cashed in, and it was that spinner belt, which symbolized, who the character of John Cena eventually drew into fans and what made them hate me more. And this is where John Cena started to get that hate. I mean, he didn't really do too much at this point, but by next year, he'd done enough that I could see why people were starting to hate him. But he was in a match against Triple H, which is a match that was like, I'm sure we see this plenty of times at pay-per-views, other pay-per-views on B shows, but as far as a WrestleMania match, like, sure, why not? It was a match I feel it's bound to happen at WrestleMania. But John Cena came as champion, taking on Triple H, who won this opportunity after a tournament, a qualifying tournament they had leading up to this match after Rey Mysterio won the Royal Rumble. And the match was still good. I mean, the crowd was really hating on Cena. Not as bad as ECW One Night Stand, though. But, like, the whole match had reactions to it, and people were still enjoying it. It was John Cena taking on, like, a more experienced veteran in Triple H, who, was, probably, like, still, like, in the prime of his career, just doing whatever he has to do. But, he's kind of, like, not as new as he felt like he was. But this was a year where, Triple H turned face, and he was, him and DX got back together, so it was it made his run worth a little bit more whenever down the line for the next several years, until he started going part-time again. I believe it was like in 2010 or 2011, I think that was. I'd say 2010, I think, if not definitely 2011, when he starts going part-time, not wrestling all the time anymore. But the match was still good. I mean, it wasn't a classic or anything, but it was still a good to great match, as most of the matches were on these shows. Cena, though, got Triple H to tap out to the STFU. I was a little surprised by that, but again, match was still good. Whatever. I loved it, and as I said, I really like this WrestleMania. I feel like it's one show that gets overlooked a lot, but we have a couple good moments. Rey Mysterio getting his WrestleMania moment, Mick Foley and Edge stealing the show with the hardcore match, and Mickie James as well. Taking part in one of probably the best women's match in WrestleMania history as well. So that's why I'm going to still stick to my grade at the beginning. I'm going to give WrestleMania 22 a strong B. What are your thoughts on WrestleMania 22? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And as always, click that like and subscribe for more content on this channel. Follow me on Twitter, DemandAir193. I also did my review of NXT TakeOver War Games tonight. Make sure to check that review out as well. And I will hopefully do WrestleMania 23 tomorrow. But I definitely will be doing a review of Survivor Series on my channel. Or, again, if one of my Horseman brothers want me to do a review with them on their channel, I'll do that with them. And I'll just post that into my pay-per-view playlist as well. But that's it, guys. Thank you again for tuning into my WrestleMania 22 review. With that, guys, I'll see you all later. Have a great night.